Join me today as I paint one of Bob's pictures, Sunset Aglow. If you're new to my channel, my name is Carl. I'm a Bob Ross certified painting instructor. Welcome. I'm considering offering some virtual painting classes or more detailed downloadable lessons. If you're interested in the Bob Ross painting technique, let me know in the comments which method you'd prefer. Also, some of my original paintings are for sale now on my website, which I'm very excited about. So sit back and relax, or get your supplies ready and paint along with me. Let's have some fun. I'm using a 16 by 20 canvas. I've applied a very thin coat of liquid white. The liquid white is wet, so we can move in slide paint. Here are the colors you'll need to paint along with me. With a little bit of Indian yellow and cadmium yellow on the 1-inch brush, I'm just making these X strokes kind of in the center portion of the sky. And don't worry about the streaks right now. We'll work those out as you start blending. You can certainly use a 2-inch brush. And then here I added a little bit of bright red. So just a little bit, very powerful. And I'm working it underneath the yellow color. Again, doing just the X strokes. And you can see the liquid white on the canvas, allowing us to blend and move paint. And just be careful not to bring the red too far into the yellow. We do want to have that yellow glow. So I'm just blending some of the brush strokes out. Create a nice warm sky. Now with a little bit of phthalo blue and alizarin crimson, I mixed up a lavender color. You can see it was a little blue at first, and then I brought in a little bit more crimson. So you can change the flavor as you wish. And again, just because I'm doing one of Bob's pictures, I'll put my own spin on it. But it'll be very similar. So here again, you can see the X strokes. Being very careful not to destroy all the yellow. And the more you work it, the softer it'll get. So you can spend a lot of time controlling that softness. I switched over to a 2-inch brush for some blending. And I'm just going to use those X strokes and start working slowly to blend the colors together. But watch all of those brush strokes kind of disappear just as I go over it. I'm using a medium pressure. But as I'm blending like this, I move to a lighter pressure. And then when I go across horizontally, very, very soft. Now for the clouds, I have a fan brush going into a little bit of titanium white. And you can see I'm using just the corner of the brush, doing little circular motions. And I'm focusing on the very top edge. I want to think of that top edge of the cloud. I reload. Again, doing those circular motions, really scrub in. That's all we care about is that top edge. And I'm going right above the yellow, as you can see, kind of on that boundary to the blue lavender color. With a clean brush, I'm going to do little circular motions with the corner of the brush. And I'm just focused on the base of the clouds. And you can see I'm going very close to the top edge, but I want to leave the top edge. And then I'm fluffing using little wispy motions. And sometimes I wipe on a paper towel, you can see, and very soft. 2 hairs and some air. Go across and look at that fluffy, beautiful cloud just floating in the sky. And then here with very little paint, I'm just putting some indications. Maybe in the distance we see some indications of some clouds. I don't want too much, just some indications. But this is a beautiful sky. Lots of layers and depth. And you can just have so much fun building the sky. Notice I'm not using a lot of paint. There's hardly any paint on the brush. Now this is really cool. I picked up some of that purple and I'm bringing it down into the yellow as a cloud. And I just think it's, again, adding that depth and variety into our sky. Just beautiful. Again, just very carefully softening, fluffing the clouds. And we'll do the same on the other side. Notice I'm not really spending a whole bunch of time because these are subtle in the distance, not a lot of detail. And then back to the fan brush with titanium white, and I'm working in layers. So again, just scrubbing in another layer of clouds. You can put in as many as you want. As Bob would say, it's your world. Painting should make you happy. And again, very soft, using the corner of the brush. And then I'm going to fluff. Beautiful fluffy clouds. And look at how quickly we've created a pretty nice sky, I'd say. And again, I'm just softening. Now with a little bit of the lavender color from the sky. Don't do too much, but I'm creating a cloud shape right in the front as if it's almost silhouetted against the yellow sky. Just scrubbing in some color. Again, focusing on the layers. And look at the depth it creates. My color's a little bit more to the red, crimson side. And I'm just subtly putting in some clouds here. Just floating in the sky. And now it's a little bit looser. You can see I was a little bit looser with these clouds. And now I'm going in with the 1-inch brush and just softening, blending. I don't mind some of those darker colors on the clouds. I think it adds something to the painting. Looks like there's a little bit more crimson there. And very carefully, you want to be careful because you're going across the yellow sky. So I'm just being very soft, really controlling my brush strokes. And then here I'm just softening and blending. And by being loose, it creates a lot of variety. There. And then fluff, and then I'll wisp ever so slightly go across. 2 hairs and some air. And that quickly, we have a nice, fluffy, gorgeous sky. Now, picking up some of the color, I probably should have done this while I was painting the sky, but I got too carried away. I'm just reflecting some of the color down into the water. We'll have some water in this painting. So you can see it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just creating some of the colors where I know the water will show. Now in this case, I am doing some X strokes. You can pull horizontal strokes. I find that if I'm going to do more of a still lake, I tend to just mirror the sky with the X strokes. And then here I'm just adding some lavender. And you can see I am pulling the sides horizontally. Oh, there's a bristle. I'm going to get that out of there. If you go perpendicularly across it, it'll just pick it right out. So here, the more you go over this, the softer it'll get. So you can make your water just look so tranquil, calm. And that quickly we can create a beautiful lake just using those very similar colors. Now on the fan brush, I've created a little bit of the lavender color. So phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, a little bit of white. Mine's a little bit more to the red side. Remember, the blue is very powerful. And I'm just scrubbing in a very distant mountain. So I'm not looking for a lot of detail. This one's going to be pushed way far away. And then with a 1-inch brush, this just had a little bit of the light color on it. I'm going to blend and slide paint. That's the beauty of this technique. We can just move and slide. And we're creating almost like a misty layer underneath just by softening it. This is just far away in our world. Look at that. Just a very simple foothill or mountain. And then by adding a little bit more phthalo blue and a hint of black. Not too much. I don't want it to be fully dark, but definitely a little different than the background color. I'm just shaping in a mountain. So really scrubbing. You can see I'm really pushing in that color into the canvas. Don't be afraid to push the color in. And then I do scrape away the excess. Not to go too low, We don't want to go too low. But there's kind of the shape. You know, don't have your mountain edges to be too straight. So I have some jagged things going on. That same 1-inch brush, we're going to pull and slide. And I really want to flatten out this paint. I don't want thick paint on here underneath. It'll make it much more difficult with the highlights. So you can see I'm just softening and blending and starting to shape the mountain. You'll start to see where you want the highlights and shadows. You'll start to see things. But look at how I've pushed that far distant foothill or mountain way far away. Now with a little bit of white and a hint of bright red, little roll of paint, and then we're going to start putting in the beautiful highlights. So notice my handle is starting to be elevated, let the paint grab, and then I'm going to slowly drop the handle as I go down to the side. And leave some of that color coming through underneath, the dark color. Looks like craters, crevices, adds depth to your mountain. There. And you'll see me sometimes go over sections. Just as long as you have light pressure, you can do that. And we don't want to forget about these peaks in the distance. And you'll see I'm just dancing back and forth, thinking about where the highlights are. You want to really think about highlights, and then we'll eventually get to shadows here. But you have so much power when you're shaping your mountain. Now here I just added a little bit of the shadow color with a little bit more crimson and white. I want this to be a darker shadow color. Here I'm dancing back into some highlights. And then notice this is a little bit darker. I thought some of that darkness would help because the base mountain color was a little bit more of a medium color. So I put in some of this dark color just to add some more contrast to the mountain. And then here, notice I'm using the small part of the knife. Look at this peak. Pushes those back peaks way far away. This one's coming forward. Just with that little change in tone. And look at this mountain come to life. And I'm starting to use the 1-inch brush just to wisp. I tap the base and then go up a little bit. Don't go too far into your mountain color. But I do want to soften the base. Make it look like mist. Wow, look at that. Makes the mountain float. And then here I just add some final highlights. Now going back to the lavender color with a little bit of white, this one's a little darker than our background mountain. So alizarin crimson and phthalo blue, a hint of white, and I'm just starting to tap to create the indications of some foothills. And I'm just tapping, again, not going too low because I want to save my water, and we'll have some foreground. But again, I'm just tapping just to create the indications of some distant trees. And I'm right under the mountain. And I left a little bit of a gap. You'll kind of see that. And that creates the illusion of mist. And then with some of that color, I'm going to pull straight down to create that reflection. Look at how quickly we can create a reflection. Very simply, pulling straight down. Make sure you pull straight down. If we pull at an angle, it doesn't necessarily look as realistic. And then here I just went into, or I just grabbed my 1-inch brush and just softened, and then I'm going to go across just to set in the reflection. And for the waterline, I mixed up a little bit of white and the dark crimson color. I don't want this to be straight white. I want it to be a little bit more subtle. You could make a gray color, but really I'm just putting some basic indications. I just want some indications. And again, I'm going straight across. We want that water to be straight. And that quickly we have ourselves a little water line. And for this foreground color, I'm mixing up a little bit of the black, phthalo blue, Van Dyke brown, and sap green. I want this to be, you can see it's dark, it's a dark color, a hint towards the green side. And I'm just tapping in where I want the grasses to be. I'm kind of framing in the indication, just with a fan brush, a fair amount of paint, just tapping. And then using the brush vertically, I'm going to tap in a trunk, and then notice I'm kind of favoring the right side of the brush, and I'm starting to move down, and notice I rotate my wrist more as I go down. Kind of to think of the lay of the shape of the tree. So notice my wrist is moving, not really moving my fingers really. Right side of the brush, reload. Sometimes you'll have to flip the brush over or even reload if the tree's really big. And then here, notice I flip the brush and I'm reloading. And notice on the very, very top of the evergreen trees, I left it blank. It's just the trunk. And then here I'm just going to fill in some color. And then with a 1-inch brush, I'm grabbing some of the color, pulling straight down. And then here I wanted the grasses to come a little bit lower. There. And just pulling straight down. Again, very quickly we can create the illusion of a reflection. And then go straight across, very subtle. And then with the knife, I grabbed a little bit of dark sienna and titanium white and touched for the trunk indications. And then here I just mixed up a little bit of sap green and cadmium yellow. You can vary the yellows. And if you need to thin the paint, this would be the time to do it. Just a very little bit of thinner, or in my case I used walnut oil. And notice I'm just tapping, very, very soft. We want to create that velvety look for the grass. And then I am reflecting some of the color. Just putting some yellow indications. But look at that, by leaving some of the dark transitions, I can create just some different planes in my grass. Look at that. Just beautiful. And then here, similar color, I added a little bit more sap green. And again, highlighting the evergreen trees, right corner of the brush. Save some of the dark. I just want some indications. There. And then I mixed up a little bit of a sand color. So dark sienna, some white, and I'm just scrubbing in some sand. And then here's pretty much straight white and a little roll of paint. And again, keep your palette knife horizontal as you cut across. So notice I'm dropping the handle, but I'm still cutting across horizontally. Now on this side, I'm pretty much going into, I have a dark mixture of black, blue, brown, and a hint of green, but this is definitely more to the neutral color, maybe even bluish, but very dark. And really I'm just scrubbing in paint. And then here I'm shaping my evergreen tree. But the grassy area doesn't really matter, I'm just scrubbing in color. So here I'm reloading. This is kind of a bigger tree, enjoying itself. And as I'm down at the base of the tree, I'm pretty much really pushing that brush, the bristles flat. And then we got to give the big tree some friends. So here we have some little evergreen trees, have a nice view overlooking this beautiful lake. So I'm just focusing on the shape of the trees. There. And let's add another one. Might as well. Good evergreen tree practice. And then back to the 1-inch brush, I'm just starting to shape in some of those grasses. We'll put in some bushes here as well. Really, I just want to scrub in color. Get that color in there. And then you'll notice some of those gaps. I turned the brush vertically and I just tapped in some maybe vertical bushes, but you'll see those kind of come to life as I start highlighting. But this sets the foundation for the base color. Going back to the white and dark sienna, little roll of paint, and I'm again putting in some indications of some tree trunks. And then the yellow color, the highlight color on the fan brush. If you need to thin it down, which you probably will, do that. And just some subtle highlights. Starts to bring to life our painting. And then back to that green color, I went a little bit more to the yellow. So a little bit more cad yellow. Very beautiful. Look at that velvety grass. Just tap, and it picks up some of the dark, and it softens and blends. And then with the half round, again, one of my favorites, I'm going to start creating the illusion of some bushes. So I've got some Indian yellow. And think about shape and form of your bushes. You can vary the colors a little bit. And then with a little bit of Van Dyke brown on the knife, I'm gonna scrub in a little path. Maybe this path just meanders towards the front of the canvas here. We don't know. Just put in a little bit of that Van Dyke brown. And then again with that highlight color, so this is just dark sienna and white. Very light pressure. Notice, let it break. And then I'm back to the 2-inch brush. And I'm just, again, bringing in some of that soft grass. Very, very light. And work in layers again. Create those separate layers and kind of rolling hills, as you will. And then here next to the path, I'm just adding some very subtle indications with a fan brush and some of the yellow grass color. I just feel like it sets in the path a little bit. Maybe there'll be some grass growing there. Just some indications. That just helps set it in. And then here I see something. I'm actually thinking of layers. So I'm extending this big tree with a little bit of that dark color. Watch how it pushes that background farther away. There, I'm just bringing it forward. This is the power you have in your paintings. You can move and shape things as you wish. I just saw this. I wanted to bring this forward just to create more depth in the picture. There we go. Just filling in some more of the dark color. And then again, going back and reshaping that grass. But look at the layers it creates. Just like that. And then at the base of the tree, it's a little darker, so I'm just subtly tapping. And think about shape, your grasses. Here I went a little brighter and moved forward, and I, again, kept some of that dark in between. Just add some depth to your picture. There, just soft. It creates such a beautiful illusion of grass. And then back to the half round in some of the various green and yellow colors. I'm just going to tap, there's that vertical bush. This brush does such a great job just creating those bush highlights. I really, really enjoy it. And then here I'm going a hint brighter, maybe a little bit more yellow. You can vary the tones. This one I added a little bit more of the Indian yellow to it. But again, focus on the top edge of your bushes and then leave that dark space. And then I thought in the corner this would be a nice spot for a little bush in the foreground. So I'm just going to put a few little highlights. Again, very subtle, and let it mix into the dark color. I love the colors of this picture. Such a gorgeous picture. And then with the knife, I'm just scratching in some sticks and twigs. These are really nice details, very simple, and then it's time to sign it. What a fantastic painting. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Check out my website at carlvonartistry.com. I focus on Bob Ross painting, leatherwork, and photography. Happy painting. See you next time.